Chun Li is finally in Fatal Fury, and in this video I'm gonna explain to you how to play her, going over her neutral, her best up-close pressure tools and mix-ups, and also an optimal combo guide for the character. And this guide is actually sponsored by SNK, so a huge shout out to SNK for this opportunity, and also all the flowers and love to them, because the work that they did around Chun Li is absolutely crazy. To me, this is one of the best DLC characters in the entire year for the fighting in general. So let's get into the guide. Okay, so how does Chun Li want to play neutral in Fatal Fury? I would argue that there are 3 layers to Chun Li's neutral, and the most fundamental one is using her fireballs. Why? Because her light fireball specifically is very slow, kind of like the one that Hotaru has. So with Chun Li, you can throw the light fireball and run behind it. And it is kind of like a free card to play neutral, because you run behind the fireball. If people jump and you're ready to anti-air them, of course, you get free damage on them and another turn. And if they just stand there and block the fireball, it has enough hit stun if you run behind it to get a turn, you know, because they are actually pretty plus on block if you're running behind them and you press a button right after the hit. So it is a very free way to play neutral, and it is kind of like layer 1 of Chun Li's neutral. Just throw the fireball, the light one, run behind it, be ready to anti-air if people want to jump over it, and if they just block it, it is basically your turn unless they reversal. And if you block the reversal, of course, Chun Li has some of the best reversal punishes in the game, especially, you know, meterless, without any meter. So it is very scary to do the piece against Chun Li. So yeah, this is the most basic fundamental layer of Chun Li's neutral, and you should be using this light fireball for meaties, and also for neutral a lot of the time is going to be very strong. And now we would have to move into layer 2. So we're using the fireballs. Now what we need to add is using Hasanshu. And why is Hasanshu so relevant? Because not only it is arguably like the only neutral skip that Chun Li has, but it is a very evasive move. It can go through some fireballs and skip them, and you get a hit, of course, for free if you skip the fireball, because people are going to be whiffing their moves if you go over it with Hasanshu. Then if you use also the EX version of Hasanshu, it is actually an overhead. So this is like a mid-range mix-up. You know, if people are being passive against you and you're playing Chun Li, you can literally Hasanshu their face with EX. If they don't block it, you know, standing, you get a full combo out of it. And if they do block it standing, you can cancel EX Hasanshu into EX Fireball, and it is your turn. You know, you're plus on block. So it is an insanely strong tool, and you should be using Hasanshu as your neutral skip every single game, but in the mid-range. It doesn't have as much range as something like Vornakul or, you know, like Flip from Andy and stuff like that, but this is arguably one of the best neutral skips in the game, because they have to be ready for the overhead EX Hasanshu. So it is really strong. It gives you full combos on hit, pressure on block if you have, you know, enough meter to cancel it into EX Fireball. So yeah, you should be using Hasanshu all the time, since it is an overhead. Also, you can even use it on block strings, and people, if they're not ready and sleeping, they're gonna get hit. So insanely strong tool that you should be using on neutral, one of the best neutral skips in the entire game. And then finally, for layer 3 of Chun Li's neutral, it is simply using the system mechanics in the most effective way that you can. Like, all system mechanics in this game can be used very well by Chun Li. She has a very good DP because it's breakable, of course, so you can do anti-airs that give you full combo. So be ready to anti-air people with your DP. It's gonna give you full combo routes and a lot of damage. Then also, Chun Li has really good red blows. Like, her red blow in the ground is amazing because she moves forward. You know, it's actually like a forward momentum move. So really strong. It can stop fireballs, of course. If you see people pressing buttons, you can do your red blow right away, and she's gonna move forward and hit them. And in the air, her red blow is also really good because it is kind of like a dive kick. You know, it's not a true dive kick, but she does, you know, a move that goes into the ground. So you can jump, and if people will be able to, you know, DP you or anti-air you, you can do your red blow in the air, and it's gonna give you a counter hit if they do a DP, and you can get another full combo out of that. So Chun Li is a character that can use all the like basic, you know, universal system mechanics of the game really well. So you should be doing that also. Like, this is a fundamental, you know, basic game. It has a lot of universal mechanics that are super strong, so you should be using all of that with Chun Li in neutral also. Hey, just in the case that you've been enjoying the content until now or learned something new, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing. It's going to help the channel to keep growing. I cover a ton of different fighting games, and of course this is going to allow me to keep bringing this sort of collaborations with SNK and maybe in the future with other fighting game developers. So now let's get into Chun-Li's section for up close pressure and mix-up. Okay, so when it comes to up close pressure and mix-ups, I think that Chun-Li in Fatal Fury is actually one of the most free-form characters in the game. Like, she can do whatever she wants, and the amount of options that she has can be even a little bit overwhelming. But I would argue that there are some basic stuff that you should be using every single match. The first one is using standing heavy punch, because this move is +3 on block, and on hit is going to allow you to actually connect it into crouching heavy punch. So this is kind of like the bread and butter button for Chun-Li. I would argue it is very plus on block for free. It is something that you have to use very up close though, like right in the face of your opponent, but you should be using this button a lot. In pressure is going to allow you to create basically frame trap situations if people want to mash or extend your pressure. Then another fundamental option up close to me is using EX Fireball, because EX Fireball is +3 on block, so it basically can give you another turn with Chun-Li, and it's going to be kind of like the EX move that you use to get basically a second turn after the guy block your first block string. So I think that those are the two most basic and relevant like tools for up close pressure and frame traps: a standing heavy punch and EX Fireball. And then another thing that you can add to your arsenal is using a standing light kick, because this button is actually very plus both on block and on hit, and if you hit people with a standing light kick, you can actually do then another normal after and get a full combo out of the hit. And this is going to be kind of like your bread and butter routing for when you get to cross up people. You know, you do jumping light kick, and then you hit the cross up, and maybe you do jab into standing light kick, and then into, for example, crouching heavy punch. So this button is key also for Chun-Li's pressure and for frame traps. Like, you need to be using standing light kick and kind of like interchange it with a standing heavy punch. And then for the actual mix-ups, you have a ton of options. Like I just said, you can use a jumping light kick to cross up people. It's really good and it can give you full combos. You also have very good lows on crouching heavy kick and crouching light kick, which can also give you combos. And then Chun-Li also has a lot of overheads. Like, you have the EX Hasanshu, like I said earlier, which is an overhead. It's an EX move in this meter, but it is an overhead. You also have a down forward light punch, which is Chun-Li's classic, you know, like punch overhead. And then you can also jump with Chun-Li and do your down light kick kicks in the air and cancel them into heavy punch or heavy kick for another overhead. So like, she has a lot of options to open people up, and you should kind of be mixing your playstyle in between being like a frame trap monster, you know, using a standing heavy punch and standing light kick to punish people for mashing when they're trying to basically press buttons in your block strings. And then you should kind of like, when people are already respecting you, start using all of these mix-ups and maybe do like standing heavy punch into a mix, which could be a low, an overhead, or even a jump into a cross-up, or even just a button with plus frames into a dash grab. You know, like with Chun-Li, you need to have this mindset. I would argue that you kind of like condition people to block, and then when they start blocking and they stop doing reversals, you know, they stop pressing buttons, you move into plus frames into mix-up, you know, and you do plus frames into low, plus frames into overhead, plus frames into cross-up, or even again plus frames into grab. And this is going to make Chun-Li a very scary character, because it is very hard to know what she's gonna do if you're respecting her. So this is kind of the way in which you should understand Chun-Li's pressure and mix-ups. And well, now that you understand how to play Chun-Li's neutral and her best options up close for pressure, mix-ups, and frame traps, let's move to the combo guide. I tried to make the most functional and also kind of optimal combo guide that I could without making it too long, because the amount of combo variety that Chun-Li has is very big. So let's get into it.